So here's a little tip. If you ever wander into a convent because you think it's a coffee shop and you're too polite to leave, or you're ever a contestant on Who Wants to Be a Living Saint game show, and you are asked any questions, here are the 4 replies that you can just rotate. God, Jesus, the Virgin Mary, or because I am a horrible human being. Any 4 of those will probably work in turn. New surprises came every day, and they were not pleasant. One time, we got up in the morning, and Sister Milagro told us that if we really loved Jesus, we would mortify ourselves by going to the bathroom only once a day. Now, I thought she was kidding, so I laughed and said, okay, just call me Sister Mary Bladder Infection. She didn't think that was funny. And then, okay, so we kneeled on the bare concrete floor. I don't know this kneeler bullshit. We kneeled on the bare concrete floor. Of course, the men have like these nice knees. Why am I being a bitch about how hard the convent was? Okay, so we kneeled on the bare concrete floor 4 hours a day. So we would develop kneeling calluses, right? So the kneeling calluses would ooze, and then they would get stuck to your habit when you kneeled down, and then you would get up and they would rip off, and then you would go to genuflect and they would stick again, and then they would rip off. And we weren't supposed to complain about that, except for we did all our laundry by hand. It was really hard to get the callus ooze juice out of a white habit with only a bar of soap in our hands. And so we pointed this out to Sister Milagro, and they had this totally gruesome crucifix. It was just, it was like a life-size figure, even a little bit bigger than life-size, right in the middle of our very small chapel. And it was super bloody to start out with. And then one time, Sister Priscilla, who was like the second nun in charge, came to the convent. She thought it wasn't bloody enough. She covered almost the entire thing in red paint. And it looked like Jesus was like some kind of like performance art thing. So Sister Milagro looks at super bloody Jesus and says, Sister, what wound are you making in Jesus' tender side when you complain about spending time with him? And I said, oh, that wound wasn't made by me. That wound was made by that other sister who went to the bathroom twice today. So Sister Shantadan, our regional superior, took me aside, and she said, you know, the problem with you, sister, your problem is that you have entirely too much self-esteem. That's a termination notice you're only going to get from the convent, right? I'm not going to go to work tomorrow. They're going to be like, Kelli, you know, you just have a lot of self-esteem, and it makes you a confident, effective employee, and frankly, that's just not working out for us, you know. So I was able to maintain my denial somewhat until Mother Teresa came to the Bronx. And she walked in, and she said, oh, sister, what is your name? And I told her, and she furrowed her brow, which, you know, she was pretty fucking old by that time. Her brow was already pretty furrowed, right? So she further furrowed her brow to the point where she looked like a Shar-Pei puppy. And she goes, oh, sister, I've heard of you. What was I supposed to say to her? I've heard of you too? Like, so instead I just like kept this awkward silence. Now, I should have known then, right? I should have known that, so pre-aspirancy, just supposed to be a month long. I was there for a year and a half, which is the convent equivalent of failing preschool 18 times. But I stayed because we had like these moments of like complete beauty. The day after Easter, which we called MC Easter because we worked on actual Easter, we all went to Long Island to a retreat center to kind of have a picnic. And one of my group sisters, Sister Carmel, found a basketball somewhere, and she's bouncing it around trying to get the nuns together for a pickup game. And I thought, they're never going to go for this. But let me tell you, nuns on the basketball court, transformed into women who run with the fucking wolves. So there was Sister Bernard. She was, at the time, the oldest living member of the Missionaries of Charity. And she's like, oh, I don't know, maybe I could play. And when I went to take a jump shot, she jumped up in the air, bashed the ball back into my face, grazed my palm so that I was bleeding everywhere. Then she started screaming, "Sister, you have the stigmata!" Then there was Sister Maria Juanita, who said, well, I don't know, it's beautiful to try. So as Sister Carmel was attempting to throw me a bounce pass, Sister Maria Juanita grabbed the ball, dribbled it behind her back, and made a 3-point shot. I said, I thought you hadn't played basketball before. And she said, maybe a little. Then, Sister Bernard, in a reappearance, was running down the court trying to make a layup. One of the sisters stepped on the end of her habit. She continued toward the basket until her habit was completely unraveled, sunk the shot, and when everyone was like, sister, she's like, what? I made the basket, didn't I? And the next day I wrote my home letter and I said, well, nuns play basketball the way they do everything, with their whole hearts. So I stayed because of that, but I left after one afternoon. We were cleaning the women. The nuns ran a women's homeless shelter, still there on 127th Street in the Bronx, or in Harlem. Woo, right? And we used non-disposable sanitary products, so basically a diaper that we would wash out by hand. And I'd been having my period, like for real period, not for fake period, for like 4 months, which should have been my body telling me something, right? But while we were cleaning the shelter, I noticed that there was a single tampon sitting on a woman's dresser. And I looked around and I was like, I think I'm gonna borrow that. And I picked it up and I put it in the hem of my skirt. And I realized I'm obviously not borrowing it. I'm not gonna give it back. So I didn't know what the convent was making me into, but I knew what I didn't want to be, and that was a person who stole a tampon from a homeless woman. So I went to Sister Milagro and I said, do you think this is working out? Do you think I should maybe leave? And she was like, let me think about that. Yes, you should leave. And one of my friends actually who left after I did, my friends were talking about how there was like a van. She left like just kind of without telling anybody, and there was like a van driving around North Philadelphia. And my friend was like, I didn't notice any van driving around North Philadelphia for you. And I was like, no, it wasn't that kind of leaving. Nobody was sad. Changed back into my clothes, my regular street clothes that had been crumpled up in a ball in the attic for the whole time. And Sister Milagro took me to Port Authority to get on a bus. She's just like kind of tapping her foot, well, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? And she looked happy for the first time in like a year. My sister was in Philadelphia, and so I said, I guess Philadelphia? And I just cried on the entire bus ride. I started my life over. I got a job, got an apartment, got into therapy, joined a softball team, got a dolphin tattoo. All the things that were needed for the kid of making a baby dyke in the 90s. And so now people ask me where I am theologically, and I don't really worry so much about the afterlife, except for maybe that it just sounds exhausting, like another life after this one. I only want that if I can sit on a couch and watch HBO documentaries. Otherwise, I'm out. But, there was an attraction of baby butch nuns and priests in drag and groovy smelling incense. But also there was the wonder of thinking you knew all the answers, and that if everyone thought like you, the world would just be fine. There was a lot of power in that. And sometimes, even now, I'll hear like a hymn being sung in a Catholic church as I walk by, and I'll get kind of nostalgic. And I'll think, oh, well. And then remember, I was married to that guy, and he was a little bit of a jerk. I'm Kelli Dunham. Thank you.